We are live. We are live, and welcome to a very, very special edition of Sports Crunch with DKROM. I'm your host, David Cromwell, and tonight we are joined by a man who you can ask absolutely anything, and I mean anything, about football. Whether it be X's and O's and film study, inside information from all 32 NFL clubs, advice for winning your fantasy football league, or scouting and the NFL draft process, Cecil Lammey is a guy you can count on when it comes to all of those fronts. He covers the Denver Broncos for Bleacher Report. He writes for the acclaimed fantasy football website, footballguys.com, and hosts his own radio show every weekday morning on 104.3 The Fan in Denver. And it is a great honor and pleasure to welcome Mr. Football himself to the show, Cecil Lammey. What's up, Cecil? Great to have you.
David, namaste, my friend. Thank you very much for asking me to join the show. Let's talk a little Broncos football, huh?
Broncos football and NFL football. I may be a Broncos fan, but I'm interested in all 32 teams come draft time right now. And as a surprise, we are going to do a little mock tonight. So here's how it's going to work, though. It's going to be different than other mocks. What I have done is I have just completed my second of 4 mock drafts that I'm going to do leading up to draft day. But since I am not a scout, but I don't pretend to be, I'm just an analyst who just gathers information, I'm going to give you the power to play the role of GM and accept or reject either pick based on whether you think it's a suspect scheme fit or whether it jives with what you're hearing, the buzz you're hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to try to move through this very quickly. So
well, that sounds good as long as your first pick isn't Connor Cook. I mean, I will hang up. I will leave the hangout if it's Connor Cook in the first round, maybe even in the second or third round. But yeah, David, that sounds great.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you about Connor Cook, and I am just praying to God that nobody takes him in the first round. I watched him myself. Even though I'm not a scout, I watched him in that Alabama game, wasn't impressed with him at all. So,
right. Well, the apologists will always say it was the shoulder. It was the shoulder. Well, I look at the Iowa game where the team was doing everything they could to not pass with Connor Cook. They ran the ball, it seemed like 15 times in a row at the end of that Iowa game in the Big Ten championship. And then the following week to not score a point against Alabama's shoulder or not, to not score a point, to not move the ball, to be a 50% passer in those 2 games with no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. It's just not what you want to go to. Plus, any college quarterback should have a severe red flag if they are below a 60% passer.
I completely agree. It's all about accuracy. Accuracy in the National Football League, as they say. And now, for the first pick of our mock draft, we have a trade. The Dallas Cowboys have moved up from 4 to 1, and with the first pick in the 2016 draft, they select Carson Wentz, quarterback from North Dakota State. Accept or reject?
Yeah, that's an accept there, and I do not believe Jerry Jones for a second when he says we're not going to take a quarterback at number 4. Yeah, they might, and it sounds like Tennessee has a legitimate offer on the table. There is a 50-50 chance, maybe even better, that the number 1 pick moves in this draft. Maybe it's San Francisco going to 1. Maybe it is a team like Dallas going 4 to 1. That's not a very big jump, and it sounds exactly like, hey, people haven't been talking about the Cowboys enough. Sounds like Jerry would make that move.
I completely agree, especially since Tony Romo ain't getting any younger and ain't getting any healthier either. So you have to invest in your quarterback in the future whenever the opportunity arrives. And with the second pick, the Cleveland Browns select Jared Goff, quarterback from California. Accept or reject?
Yeah, I rejected for him, but I accept it for them. Now, fortunately, with Hugh Jackson leading the way, the analytics department, even though they let some scouts go, going with a slimmer scouting department, I'm really hoping that Cleveland can turn things around. Goff is a player that goes through his progressions quickly, does a good job of looking off defenders. I don't like the way he leads his receivers into traffic way too often, in my opinion. He could do a better job of leading those receivers, but this guy definitely has franchise quarterback potential. And if you're Cleveland, you've seen the jersey and the long list of names, all the quarterbacks that they've had. I mean, this would be the right pick. He or Wentz would be the right pick to lead that team in the future. And under Hugh Jackson, a very bright offensive mind, the future could finally, for once, look bright for the Browns.
I completely agree with that. But that analytics department and reducing the scouting department makes me a little skeptical about that. I'll tell you that. And moving on with the third pick, the San Diego Chargers will select Laramie Tunsil, offensive tackle from Ole Miss. Accept or reject?
Well, this also ties into their first-round pick last year, which I did not advise, which was Melvin Gordon. I mean, the team needs to do a better job of getting holes open for the ground game. They really want Melvin Gordon to work out. You grab a Laramie Tunsil. He is the franchise tackle in this class, left tackle in this class. So it is a good move for this team, and the way it shakes out with two QBs off the top, this could actually happen. Or if we're going to say Tennessee keeps the pick and they go Jalen Ramsey, I mean, there's an opportunity for San Diego to seriously upgrade their offensive line, and this is a good move for the Chargers.
Completely agree, especially since with all those injuries and Phillip Rivers under siege last year, they owe it to Phillip Rivers to compete for championships in his final years in the league. And with the fourth pick, the Tennessee Titans select who you just mentioned, Jalen Ramsey, defensive back out of Florida State.
Well, the guy can do everything. And if you look at the team needs for Tennessee right now, it's in the secondary and it's also at tackle. So if you look at a guy that can play free safety, and it's not as simple as, well, he's not good enough to be a corner. He's not truly a shutdown corner. He has that potential because of the size, because of his disruptive ability and his click and close ability when the plays are in front of him. Scouts want click and close when you're backpedaling, when you see the play break down. How quickly do you stop and explode towards the play, towards the ball? Jalen Ramsey among the best in this class. And the fact that he can roam and play free safety as well, it's just an added bonus. So that is a great pick, a player that could easily be number one overall, depending on what happens at the top.
Yeah, and especially with Tyrann Mathieu, who arguably was the Defensive Player of the Year last year. A lot of scouts have compared Jalen Ramsey to Tyrann Mathieu. Do you see that comparison?
You know, I'm an LSU honk, as you know, David, and Mathieu is a little bit feistier, I would say, maybe a little bit more of a mean streak, but he also can have that aggression used against him. So Ramsey is probably more sedate, even though he still does play with a bit of aggression, but he doesn't take the false steps that you see with Mathieu sometimes.
Fascinating observation, Cecil. Fascinating as usual. And moving on to the fifth pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Miles Jack, linebacker or safety, wherever you line him up out of UCLA.
Well, yeah, and I love it. If I look back at a Thomas Davis, right, when he came out of Georgia and he was like, what is this guy? Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? He's whatever you want him to be. Thomas Davis, fantastic. Shaq Thompson, ironically, Carolina Panther as well. Kind of the same thing coming out of Washington that you see with Miles Jack. I mean, you want him to tote the rock. He can for you if you're Jacksonville, but you love the scheme versatility. He can play anywhere on the defense at the linebacker position because he does get after the passer. And so far, the reports have been positive. As of today, coming in, there's no problem there with Miles Jack and his knee injury. So it looks like Jacksonville, if they sit put and they get Miles Jack, a player that is easily a consideration for number one overall, I think that's a great move. And defensively, this team has enough offensive pieces, okay? They need to get it done defensively. They need to get the ball back to their offense, which can be very potent in 2016.
Absolutely. Malik Jackson, as much as you and I love him, that's not going to be enough. You need him, Dante Fowler Jr., and Miles Jack because Paul Posluszny is old, and you need speed in that linebacking core.
Right,
And all right, with the sixth pick, this is where it gets interesting. The Baltimore Ravens select Joey Bosa. Thoughts on that? Accept or reject?
You know, there have been some people talking down about Joey Bosa ever since I went on the All-Star road trip, and I show up at the Shrine game in Tampa this year. And, you know, the buzz is that I immediately pick up is Tennessee's not in love with Joey Bosa. And you go back and you go, well, why? Why is that? What is possibly going on with Joey Bosa that could cause a team with the number one pick to kind of pass on him or to really consider someone else? Well, when you look at Joey Bosa, you know what you like on the field. You know that he's got that nonstop motor. You know that he's going to get after the passer. But in looking over my notes here, if you talk about weaknesses with his game, you want a quick twitch guy. He's not a quick twitch guy. He's a high motor guy. Okay, so as far as being able to change direction and slap someone away out of a block and then get to the quarterback, that's not necessarily his game. But he's going to be relentless within his pursuit. And there are some, you know, off-field concerns, how much dedication he's going to have as a pro. I don't think that's a consideration. In fact, those are some of the red flags that you hear or you read about. I can quickly write those off based off people that I talk to. There's no problem with Bosa there in terms of motivation and really, you know, turning in his best effort to be a pro. So with me, I love the fit. And of course, as a Steelers fan, I would say, no, I don't want Baltimore to get any stronger. But yeah, they would get stronger with Joey Bosa here.
Yes, and with the 7th pick, moving along, the San Francisco 49ers and Chip Kelly are going crazy for DeForest Buckner. Accept or reject?
Yeah, well, of course, we know. I mean, is that the case? You look at anybody around the league, they're going to say, put the Oregon connection together. And we see with DeForest Buckner, a guy that pro comparison has been Calais Campbell. I think that's an adequate comparison because of the length. And length can help you a lot. You mentioned Malik Jackson earlier. That length that Buckner has and kind of a rare size and athleticism combination, the length helps him make up space even quicker because he has that wingspan. He can disrupt passing lanes. He can get to the quarterback quicker, and he has a larger grasp to really snare the running backs if the play comes next to him. So Chip Kelly getting an Oregon guy, of course.
Yes, and definitely he will be potentially teaming up with Eric Armstead, another Oregon alumni, and those two manning the edges of that front three could be potent if Chip Kelly sees it that way, and we shall find out. And with the 8th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Ezekiel Elliott, running back from Ohio State. Accept or reject that pick?
You know, if you're Miami, you're going to reject that pick because that was your pick. You were there, and every running back has either said no or you've had your offer sheet matched for Miami as they continue to look to upgrade the position from Jay Ajayi. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you already know you've got Doug Peterson coming in, right? You need Jamal Charles. Well, Ezekiel Elliott can be better than Jamal Charles. Ezekiel Elliott is the best running back in this class by far. There's nobody even close. There's no one else with a first-round grade, in my opinion. All apologies to Derrick Henry fans out there, but it's not there with him. With Ezekiel Elliott, he can do everything well. He's explosive. He's powerful between the tackles. Good receiver out of the backfield. And if you've got a Doug Peterson offense, Sam Bradford, Alex Smith, I mean, hospital food, airline food, it's kind of the same thing. If you've got Sam Bradford, make it simple. Hand off the damn ball, run the rock, get it done with Ezekiel Elliott.
Completely agree. And another thing that scouts love about Ezekiel Elliott is his pass blocking. He is an amazing blocker coming out of college, especially coming
out. And that will keep you off the field, David. I'm glad that you note that. A rookie running back, and I don't care where you're drafted or undrafted, if you can't pass protect, you won't see the field.
Yes, thank you, Peyton Manning, for that innovation that'll last generations in the sport of football. Running back, you got to be able to have your quarterbacks back in order to see the field on all 3 downs, or else you're going to be on the bench. And with the 9th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Ronnie Stanley, offensive tackle, Notre Dame, to protect Jameis Winston. Accept or reject?
Right, and that just makes sense for this team. This tackle class has about 6 guys up at the top. It falls off after that, but the talent is certainly there with Stanley. And what you're looking for is a player that can come in, help protect Jameis Winston because of that investment that you've made, and also to go with the offensive weapons that you had. You re-upped with Doug Martin. Vincent Jackson's still there. Of course, Mike Evans coming out of the sophomore slump, which is kind of weird to think because he had more catches, more yards, but he had 9 fewer touchdowns than he did as a rookie. But you've made investments on the offensive side. You need to continue that. And, of course, Dirk Cutter taking over. I think this is a good pick because of that match with Jameis Winston.
Yes, and especially since I don't think Donovan Smith is a legit left tackle. He's more of a right tackle, or if not guard, dare I say.
Right, and it's the same consideration you look at Tennessee. I mean, you look at what they have on the edge, and it's not good enough. If Tennessee does stick with the first pick, then you go, okay, that's got to be Laramie Tunsil, because right now you're penciling in Taylor Lewan from Michigan, who should be a right tackle in my opinion. And the guy that played right tackle at Michigan next to him, Michael Schofield, should move into guard for the Broncos. But again, that's for another show.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could say that about a lot of these offensive line prospects coming into the NFL these days. You don't know where they fit because of the confusion created by the spread offenses. We'll talk about that on another show, as you said. With the 10th pick, the New York Giants select Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver from Ole Miss. Accept or reject?
He's a plus possession receiver. People will look at the 40 time and they'll say, oh, what's this guy slow? What's this? This guy is savvy as a route runner. And at that pick, it could be Elliott. Of course, in this mock, Elliott's off the board to their division rival in Philadelphia. But the Giants, even though they've added Bobby Rainey, they're still looking to upgrade that running back spot. get you another weapon. We can't trust that Victor Cruz will ever be himself again, okay? And we know Ruben Randall's moved on. He was half a slappy anyway. You've got Odell Beckham Jr. You need that talent opposite of him, and that's where Treadwell comes in, a player that scouts have compared to DeAndre Hopkins, and I think it's an honest comparison because of the savvy to set up your route, to fight for the ball, win at the point of the catch. When you're watching wide receivers, don't just look at the 40 time. Don't just look at how they catch passes when they're wide open. Do they use subtle things? Do they use an elbow to help create separation? Do they wait until the last moment to look over their shoulder as the pass is coming in? Do they have that knack for catching those passes over the shoulder the way that Laquan Treadwell does? Hey, Eli Manning, Grandpa Coughlin may be done, but I'm going to give a Werther's original out to that pick. I like the fit with Laquan Treadwell with the Giants.
Oh, yeah, he and Odell Beckham Jr. are going to do wonders for Eli Manning and your fantasy football team, I'm sure, as well. I think Treadwell's presence opposite Beckham will make Beckham even more dangerous, dare I say.
Well, and that's the thing I wanted to interrupt there, David. There's a lot of people that will say, oh, well, when player X goes to where there's another great receiver, it'll take away from it. No, it makes them better. You know what? Des Bryant would be better if they had better receivers opposite him. Look at Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. We've seen this time and time again in the NFL. When you just can't bracket one guy and maybe even triple cover him, as you do with Odell Beckham Jr. sometimes, when you can just take one guy away because the other guys around him can't play, that hurts the numbers. You have to get more creative, move a guy across the line. But if you have two great wide receivers that can be lined up outside, put in the slot, put in motion, what have you, that really frustrates what a defense can do. And they have to pick. Sometimes you'll see single coverage. And if you add a Treadwell, sometimes Odell Beckham Jr. is going to see single coverage in the formation, and that's a win for the Giants.
Especially in the red zone with Laquan Treadwell's size and Alshon Jeffrey-esque ball skills, dare I say.
Yes.
And with the 11th pick, moving along, we're going to have to quicken the pace here because we're on a tight budget here. With the 11th pick, the Chicago Bears select Vernon Hargreaves III from Florida. Accept or reject?
Yeah, again, the defensive adjustments continue. That's what they have to do. Coming out of Florida, Hargreaves is largely considered the second best corner. So I approve that pick.
Yes, and Andrew Mason, who both you and I are familiar with, compared him to Chris Harris Jr. in terms of his technical soundness. So John Fox will definitely love a player like that. With the 12th pick, the New Orleans Saints select Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle from Louisville. Accept or reject?
Yeah, and what you want is you want a big body that can stuff the run and kind of be the centerpiece, the fulcrum there for the Saints defense, which needs a lot of help.
Absolutely. And with the 13th pick, the Miami Dolphins select William Jackson III, defensive back from Houston. Accept or reject?
You sure they don't want a running back? You sure they're not going to try to reach for a running back here? Now, Jackson III would be the next corner up. If we've already got a Hargreaves gone, of course, if you've already got Ramsey gone, then you look at Jackson III and the Miami Dolphins secondary. And remember, Vance Joseph, their new defensive coordinator, was the Broncos' first choice last year, not Wade Phillips. And the Bengals would not let Vance Joseph go. Vance Joseph is gone, and he's in Miami, and I think one day he makes a great head coach, and I know that he's going to make a great defensive coordinator. So Miami, I poke fun about the running back situation, but you have a great young head coach in Adam Gase, and you have a great young defensive coordinator and future great head coach in Vance Joseph.
Amen. Agree on all counts. And with the 14th pick, there's been a trade. The New York Jets have traded up with the Raiders to 14, and they have selected Paxton Lynch, quarterback from Memphis.
You know, I could see something like this happening. The Jets, in whatever happens with Ryan Fitzpatrick, we know that he's not some long-term solution. That's where Paxton Lynch comes in. The pro comparisons that are tossed out when people say, what is he, tall? He must be like Brock Osweiler. No, he's 6'7", but he's so compact in what he does with his throwing motion and also his movement as an athlete. And watching Brock Osweiler for 4 years and his wide open throwing motion and his long gazelle-like stride, that's something that's easier to trip up, easier to disrupt. If you're a pass rusher coming in, you got a quarterback way back here with the ball, that's easy to get to. With Lynch, it's a lot more compact, and he's a true scrambler. Osweiler's not a scrambler. I would compare Paxton Lynch more to Marcus Mariota than I would to Colin Kaepernick or Brock Osweiler.
Yes, and Lance Zierlein from NFL.com, one of my personal favorite draft analysts, wholeheartedly agrees with you. That was his comparison as well. And very briefly, do you think Paxton Lynch is an ideal quarterback for the Chad Gailey offense?
Anybody is. I mean, if he can get it out of Tyler Thigpen, Anybody is. And remember, Cordell Stewart, who also Paxton Lynch was a huge Cordell Stewart. He had a slash poster on his bedroom wall. Cordell Stewart's some of his best years were under Chan Gailey. So that's a really interesting note.
Absolutely. I can only imagine what he'll do with Paxton Lynch. And with the 15th pick, the Los Angeles Rams, I take great pride in saying that, select Kevin Dodd, defensive end from Clemson, to line up opposite Robert Quinn. Accept or reject?
Yeah, and this makes sense. Of course, Chris Long moving on with the New England Patriots now, so they need some help on that defensive line, and they get a ton of it right there to help put together that defense. They may not have a sexy part of the offense outside of Todd Gurley, and certainly Case Keenum's not going to get anyone excited, but I agree with the Dodd pick.
Yes, sir. And I'm very high on Dodd myself. And with the 16th pick, the Detroit Lions select Chris Jones, defensive tackle or defensive end from Mississippi State. Accept or reject?
Interesting. I'm going to reject this one, honestly. If I look at what the Lions need, they need better offensive line play, all right? And you go back to the loss of Calvin Johnson. Well, you grab Marvin Jones. You're going to have Golden Tate there. We'll see if Eric Ebron will actually be good or be forever remembered as the guy who was picked instead of Odell Beckham Jr. I have a feeling it's going to be the latter. But if you put in a Jack Conklin, offensive tackle for Michigan State, in this spot, I would feel a lot better about the prospects, and also to help spring a young guy like Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah took time to get started at Nebraska. He's obviously taken time to get started in the pros. You could help him out with some offensive line help.
Absolutely. And with the 17th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Leonard Floyd, outside linebacker, Georgia. Accept or reject?
Yeah, well, Georgia, I mean, it's the Georgia connection there. And when you have a team that is so bankrupt in terms of defensive playmakers, if you can add a guy that can get after the passer, that can work well in coverage, I think that's a great move for Atlanta. Clearly, it's the defensive side of the ball. The offense is set. Get the defensive side set.
All right, and now we're really entering rapid fire territory. With the 18th pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Jack Conklin, tackle from Michigan State. Got to protect Andrew Luck.
There he is. Finally, Andrew Luck he got killed by the Broncos defense last year. You can't have that. And in a division where I don't think the Texans make the playoffs with Brock Osweiler, that's not going to happen if Andrew Luck can stay upright and healthy.
I completely agree. And Ryan Grigson, invest in an offensive line and a defense for Andrew Luck, please, because I personally want to see him succeed, and it's a disgrace what you did to him last year.
Yes.
And with the 19th pick, the Buffalo Bills select one of your favorite players in this draft, Robert Nkemdiche, defensive end of Mississippi State. Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to say it was Nkemdiche. Listen, at 300 pounds, he's chiseled like a Greek god. Can you find that motivation? I'll tell you this. Rex Ryan will kick his ass, all right? And that's exactly what Nkemdiche needs, a player at the combine that, by his own admission, said he got lazy. Rex Ryan's not going to allow that.
He definitely won't, but I'll tell you, if he does fall to the Broncos at 31, I definitely agree Bill Kohler or Wade Phillips won't let him, will kick his ass too.
Right.
Agree.
Yep.
So he should definitely be on the table for Denver. I warmed up to that possibility. When with the 20th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Darren Lee, linebacker, Ohio State.
Does Jack Del Rio run more than a vanilla scheme? I mean, I love almost every move the Raiders have done, okay? The Raiders and Reggie McKenzie. I go on the All-Star road trip, right? And Reggie McKenzie, usually it's like, I'm the Raiders GM. This year is like chest was out. He's just like, I'm Reggie McKenzie. Like, it was awesome to see. I love Reggie McKenzie. I love that he's a Ted Thompson protege. And I love the moves that Oakland have done, especially defensively. So that move makes a lot of sense. My one fear is, for Raiders fans out there, Jack Del Rio will go super vanilla and screw things up.
That's my biggest fear, too. And like, I was actually talking to a Raiders fan a couple days ago, and I said, if the Raiders do not get to be consistent top-shelf playoff contenders within the next 2 or 3 years, bye-bye, Jack Del Rio. You're gone. They need a better coach.
Yep.
And yes, he, in my opinion, is the only thing I'm worried about in Oakland right now. And with the 21st pick, Washington selects Jaron Reed, defensive tackle from Alabama, to play the nose.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pronounced it Jaron, too, because that's the correct pronunciation. A player that down at the Senior Bowl was very, very dominant. And one of the biggest things that I look for, the Senior Bowl is weighted. Film is always the most important, but the Senior Bowl is, of the all-star trip, the most important, and it's more important than the Combine or even Pro Days, which are much lower. Jaron Reed wasn't exactly Aaron Donald or Von Miller. Those two players put on a show every day at the Senior Bowl. but Jaron Reed was one of the most impressive players with the strength and the quickness off the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of untapped potential there with Reed, and I think it's a good pickup for Washington.
Yes, and he's a typical Scott McLuhan player, I'll tell you that. And with the 22nd pick, the Houston Texans select Vernon Butler, defensive end, defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. Accept or reject?
Yeah, and a player that should be consideration for the Broncos, too, if he falls there. This is an accept for Houston as we see Jared Crick move on to Denver. And we know with Butler playing inside, he can actually play outside a defensive end, too, in my opinion, and be very disruptive opposite J.J. Watt. This is exactly what you need.
Absolutely. And with the 23rd pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Josh Dotson, wide receiver from TCU. Accept or reject?
Former Wyoming Cowboys, baby. We won't be able to say that because Malcolm Floyd retired, but I love this pick for Minnesota. Mike Wallace was never a fit. He never had chemistry there with Teddy Bridgewater. Get Bridgewater more weapons. This is a great move.
Yes, especially in the red zone. Dotson's size gives him that red zone presence, and Stephon Diggs, as good as he is, he's not a top-notch red zone target, in my opinion.
No.
So, and with the 24th pick, the Cincinnati Bengals select Corey Coleman, wide receiver, Baylor. Accept or reject?
Super fast, really a blazer, and can track that ball well over the shoulder. It's a concern. I would guess I would reject this pick. Will Fuller's still out there. If I'm going by the mock draft correctly, Will Fuller's still out there. Maybe not much for much longer, but I would have that pick over Coleman because Dalton's not going to be able to take advantage of Coleman's deep speed.
Oh, very good point. I will incorporate this into that comment into the article. Thank you very much for it. And with the 25th pick, your Pittsburgh Steelers select Mackenzie Alexander, defensive back from Clemson. Accept or reject?
I love it. Absolutely love it. Physical presence in the secondary. It's all what Steelers football is about. Getting after the passer, making things a little bit easier for the secondary, which has been a sore spot for the Steelers.
Yes, in order for them to go back from the polyester curtain back to the steel curtain, it all starts with the secondary in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Yes, that's arguably the only thing aside from health separating your Steelers from another Lombardi trophy. And with the 26th pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Taylor Decker, offensive tackle, Ohio State. Accept or reject?
Accept, and I'm glad it's offensive line. Actually, as this is setting up, David, I'm like, as long as it's anybody on the offensive line, that's fine. You could consider Cody Whitehair here, vice grips for hands inside a guard from Kansas State. But Seattle, they're going to want to run the ball, but they got to protect Russell Wilson better or he'll end up like Andrew Luck was last year.
Absolutely. And Tom Cable, you got your work cut out for you, my friend. So, but Taylor Decker might make it a little easier for you. And with the 27th pick, the Green Bay Packers select Andrew Billings, nose tackle, Baylor. Accept or reject?
Yes, absolutely accept. And again, we know offensively they're fine. They're more than fine. Go get you some defensive help and a guy that can stuff the run in that black and blue division.
Totally. And a guy who arguably has more brute strength than any defensive lineman in this class, dare I say. And Billings, he's pretty nimble for a big guy, too, from what I watched of him. I'm a huge fan of Billings. And moving on to pick 28, the Kansas City Chiefs select Noah Spence, outside linebacker, Eastern Kentucky, formerly of Ohio State. Accept or reject?
I liked that he accepted at the Senior Bowl and answered all the tough questions. Noah Spence did not back away from the addiction problems that he had with ecstasy, the reason why he got kicked out of the Big Ten. So I appreciate that a player had bounced back, had a fantastic season this last year with his new team, now ready for that next chapter. I get a sense that he has grown up, that we won't see him in the headlines like a Josh Gordon, Martavis Bryant, what have you. I'm not sure if Kansas City is exactly the best fit for him. And I look at the locker room. I look at the locker room in Denver and think, that's a place where he could come and grow and flourish. Kansas City, while it's a good locker room, maybe not exactly the place that he needs to be.
Yes, although the Chiefs are definitely going to be looking for pass rush help early in the draft with Justin Houston's status for 2015 uncertain. And very quickly, our final three picks. With the 29th pick, the Arizona Cardinals select one of the greatest stories in this draft, Artie Burns, defensive back from Miami. Accept or reject?
I accept it, and I'm a fan of what the Cardinals are doing on both sides of the ball. So I think that's a great pick.
Yes, absolutely. And as the NFC Championship showed, they just can't have just Patrick Peterson or even just him and Tyrann Mathieu. They need a third guy. They need a triumvirate of defensive
And
talent.
that's the thing, David. This is a three-corner league. You need some sort of third asset in your secondary. You can no longer just have one good corner, one good corner that can roam.
Absolutely, as the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks recently have shown the football world. And with the 30th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Keanu Neal, safety out of Florida. Accept or reject?
Interesting when you look at Carolina and how that they're built defensively. When you look at all the playmakers they're in, to go back secondary and to add him in, I will say this: I definitely wasn't prepared for that one, so that's kind of a bit of a shocker pick there. But I like it. I like the idea.
All right, and speaking of shockers, you're in for another. I was thinking a couple options here, but I thought that this would be a John Elway curveball here. With the 31st pick, the Super Bowl champion Denver Broncos, and I obviously take great pride and joy saying that, select Carl Joseph, free safety, West Virginia. Accept or reject?
I understand it, and I could see it. I will reject it. And looking back and going over the players that would still remain there, I love Darian Stewart, and we know that there are safeties later on. This is actually a decent safety class. We can't say that every year. And I would say the player that you have to plan for in the future to be without is TJ Ward, his playing style, the size of his contract, etc. That's why I'm a fan of grabbing a guy like KJ Dillon from West Virginia in the 5th round for the Broncos. So that to me would mean you re-up Darian Stewart next year as he's in the final year of his contract. I would prefer to stay with Stewart at free safety and grab you a young guy like Dillon to take the place of Ward. But I could see how this is setting up. And remember, John Elway, always playing chess, always thinking one step ahead. He knows he has to replace Stewart or pay Stewart. And in your mock, he's replacing him.
Absolutely. But if not Carl Joseph, who would you rather prefer there at 31?
I'd have to go back and look and see who was at the position. I mean, you've obviously taken Robert Kimdichie off the board. You've obviously taken Paxton Lynch, and I would go Jalen Smith if he's there. And I know people would say, I don't want damaged goods, but you look at a team that you want a linebacker that can play all 4 positions and star. He could be a Pro Bowler at any position in a 3-4 defense at linebacker, outside, inside, weak side, strong side. He can play any position and be a Pro Bowl caliber player. You just have to wait a little bit. And from all reports, there have been no nerve damage to his knee. Jalen Smith would be my pick in that spot because they have the patience. You have a Zaire Anderson who could take Danny Trevathan's job, okay? Or Todd Davis moving to strong side, put Brandon Marshall at weak side. You have options at linebacker, and that's why I think Jalen Smith, grab him, and he would be, if healthy, the 2nd best player on your defense, the league's best defense. And he would be the 2nd best player behind Von Miller.
Jalen Smith sounds like a John Elway rolled dice, especially with him unlikely to even play a snap in 2016. But John Elway says we also want to win from now on. That's win from now on mode pick as well. So that is a distinct possibility as well. And that does it for tonight's special edition of Sports Crunch with DKROM. A special thank you to Cecil Lammey for joining the show and giving us his amazing, beautiful football mind for however brief. It was amazing. Thank you so much, Cecil, and I definitely hope that this isn't the last time we have you on the program.
Oh, no problem, David. You're the man, and I appreciate everyone out there for watching and for listening and following along. The NFL draft has grown and evolved so much. It really is another season of football that needs to be treated as such. And guess what? The Super Bowl's coming up in about 2 weeks from Chicago.
Oh, absolutely, and I hope to see you there at a tweet up. Thank you very much, Cecil. And that does it once again on Sports Crunch with DKROM. For Cecil Lammey, I'm David Cromwell. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.